Hey guys, my name is Ryan.
And my name is Miska.
And welcome to Overwatch Central. So today we had a video planned to go over the Bastion changes. Were they really that bad? And overall talking about how it actually ended up happening. When so many people were complaining about the changes, how did they end up on the live servers? Well, we've had a little bit of breaking news coming in from Kaplan, basically saying that they're going to throw some PTR changes up tonight with the new Bastion. Now, we will be covering these changes and what they entail, but I do feel that a lot from the video that we originally scheduled goes over why this was unable to happen. The post from Kaplan is fairly lengthy, but it basically boils down to they're going to put some changes to Bastion on the PTR tonight, or this morning for those on the west coast of America. Again, they'd love to hear our feedback about the changes, which is what this video is kind of about. They don't have any specific details right now as they're still making the changes. He then talks about the meta, what it is perceived to be, and also speaks a lot about how the pro scene sort of trickles down into the competitive games. And gives the example of Mercy not really being played in the pro scene, but she's the 5th most played hero in competitive play. So basically we're going to take a section of this video out talking about his perceived state right now, because it's kind of redundant if these changes come through, but we really feel a section talking about the feedback process is worth going over. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. The footage in the background of this video, at least to start with, is some pros doing some pickup scrims during the off-season on PTR, and you can see why people are particularly excited about Bastion, and also the extent of Bastion's power.
So let's go through the changes to Bastion and highlight the actual issues here. Bastion got a fair few changes, and saying that all of them are just outright bad or OP just isn't really correct. Bastion's mobility was improved. The transformation time between modes has been dropped from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. This change in particular seems really solid. It's a bit of a quality of life change to Bastion, and it really helps with the hybrid use of Sentry and Recon mode. Outside of Sentry, so in Recon mode, Bastion feels really good now, and with the headshot capability removed from the Sentry mode, it does give the Recon mode a lot more value and a lot more use, other than just being in the mode you have to be to move around. Speaking of the removal of headshots though, Sentry mode is still an absolute powerhouse when it comes to output damage, but is incredibly hard to use at A long distance, and B, against small targets that are in your face, meaning that Bastion does still have his Achilles heels. We'd say that these changes to Bastion's mobility, damage in both forms, and ability to transition between the modes is a lot better and makes Bastion much more useful across the board. But are these changes too much?
The major problem for Bastion is a mix of 3 things. Bastion's Ironclad passive, which reduces damage taken in Sentry and Tank form by 35%, which is the biggest problem here, I think. Bastion's self-heal is now non-interruptible and on a resource like D.Va's Matrix, and the teeny tiny bit of armor that Bastion has throughout his forms. The last seems like a small bit, but Ironclad and the use of the armor together pretty much negates a lot of the damage done by those smaller projectile heroes like Tracer and Genji. All 3 of these issues together mean that Bastion can persist through a lot of incoming damage even when he's just on his own. Not to mention the incredible fun strat where the team protects the Bastion with a Mercy and a Reinhardt, and also a D.Va to mitigate some of that damage coming in as well. The survivability of Bastion looks to be a real problem, and pairing this up with a hunkered down strategy means that the shield wars are looking more likely, especially at lower ELOs where it's already happening. Basically, with these changes, we're in for something that's a little bit worse than triple tank meta and some really boring strategies. Regardless of what you think of the Bastion changes, it was weird to see Blizzard put these changes through without addressing or considering any of the major feedback that they got from the community. At least that's what it seemed like. That's most likely the problem then, right? That we as a community knew that these Bastion changes were ill-favoured, but did anybody really go and provide their feedback to Blizzard? I know we can hold our hands up and say that we didn't, and I think there's a possibility that you didn't as well. We need to stress that this was during the PTR period. Of course, these changes have come in today simply because a lot of people complained when they hit live. But if that amount of feedback was given during the PTR, and I know not as many people play on the PTR compared to live, we could have maybe avoided this whole topic of conversation in the first place. As we've gone over in the video, there are some really nice elements with the newly reworked Bastion that we do like, but his survivability and the playstyle surrounding Bastion with the El Presidente strat just isn't fun to play. So what can we learn from all of this that's happened? Well, that our feedback needs to be heard loud and clear by Blizzard, and that every voice matters when it comes to these hero balancing discussions. I guess a good example is those people that complain about those in power in politics but never actually vote in general elections. It's easy to sit and complain about these changes on Discord, on Twitter, or whatever, but it's important that Blizzard knows what we think as a community in a constructive manner.
We've discussed the use of the PTR when it comes to giving feedback, and it really feels like a boy that cried wolf scenario. Going back over the PTR post that Jeff left in early January, Jeff said that 0.26% of the player base tried those changes on the PTR, and that he encourages people to log in and play more than just one anecdotal match. So what seems to have maybe happened here was that Blizzard thought that our complaints were another knee-jerk response and took them with a bit of a pinch of salt and didn't really change anything from the PTR, and that's why Bastion is the way he is right now. It's really hard to say whether Blizzard didn't get enough responses, whether they thought the responses were based off anecdotal games for the most part, or whether all of this was communicated but Blizzard felt that the changes weren't as bad as people initially thought and that we'd get used to it. On that subject, are these problems with Bastions going to be fixed? Yes, absolutely, but it's important that we remember that this is a two-way thing and that overall Blizzard relies on our feedback, so our feedback has to be strong, backed up by a lot of facts. You have to play a lot of games to actually experience this game to the full. And just to finish this off, here's the quote that Jeff Kaplan himself said about giving feedback. It's important to contextualize your feedback and also clarify if you had played with the changes for an extended period of time or not. We were getting a lot of feedback based on gut reaction from reading patch notes or from a single match. This feedback is still really good and useful, but it was also a little bit misleading, and people started to ask questions like, is the sky falling, when in reality, most of the feedback was emotional. Again, all of that feedback is still good and important, it's just not helpful to us or the community if it's misrepresented as informed.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Again, we're going to see some changes tonight, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to keep up to date with them. And generally, what do you think of the whole thing? Let us know what you thought of the Bastion before these changes are going to come in, whether it was that bad. He was annoying to play against, sure, but it was just more things that needed ironing out as opposed to a completely broken hero. But that's my opinion. I want to hear yours. Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.